Thank you, Heather. Thank you. Welcome to the Power of Content Hubs, and welcome also to the stage our panelists. Scott from Sky Sports. Just next to Scott, we have Alex from LucidLink, and then Donald from Matrox. So, we just heard from David at Little Dot about launching and running YouTube channels. Prior to that, we had a discussion about watch-alongs and alternative viewing experiences. We've heard about how federations and leagues and broadcasters alike can use various platforms to attract, retain, and monetize and engage with sports fans. And the aim of this session now really is to kind of follow on from that and build on some of those things that we've heard. So, just bear with me 1 second. We really want to sort of look at what some of those lessons are and how best to kind of answer some of those needs that we've heard about how to kind of distribute that content in the most efficient way and make sure that fans and viewers kind of remaining engaged and up to date as easily as possible. So just to get us started, I wondered if you could just spend a minute just to give everyone a quick overview of who you are and where you're from, just so that everybody knows kind of what perspective you're bringing to this conversation. So Scott, do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. I'm Scott Miles, Head of Content Delivery at Sky Sports. My role involves joining all of our many teams together across our many platforms, products. So, I work closely with technology, with our global product team, digital team, social team, content production, and everything in between. And on a good day, making sure that all the content comes in, goes through the right places, and goes out again to our customers, creating the best experience possible.
Fantastic, thank you. And Alex?
Hi, yeah, thanks George. Hi everyone, my name's Alex Ferris. I work at a company called LucidLink, and we build a storage collaboration platform that enables some of the workflows we're going to be talking about. My role there is to work, I lead the solutions engineering team, and we work with customers and partners on things like workflow consultancy, best practice, proof of concepts, primarily around content creation, rich media workflows, and creating content from live events or production workflows to get it out into the market. So good to be here today.
Thank you. And Donald?
Thank you, George. My name is Donald Sievewright, and I'm Sales Director for Matrox. Matrox are a major supplier of hardware into the broadcast market, and in the last couple of years we have started to produce software which fits into the broadcast production workflow as well. I also wear a second hat with a company called Global M, which is I do a commercial position with them. Global M are a company who do media transport and distribution.
Fantastic. So, as I mentioned, we want to examine how centralized content management can allow for rapid and efficient delivery to social media, to mobile apps and streaming services. And we want to discuss best practices for adopting and building and optimizing workflows, automating distribution, and ensuring that content reaches fans in real time, no matter where they are and what device they're using. So Alex, we will start with you, if we can, please. So from your perspective, why is a centralized system necessary for rights holders and broadcasters who are managing live and near live content across multiple platforms and OTT services?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that our customers talk to us a lot about. And there's many reasons, to be honest, that they're looking to adopt a centralized platform. Primarily, I would say that the leading benefit you'll get is the speed or the time to publish. The viewers and the users of any live content, sports especially, they expect to see things within minutes, if not seconds. They're super engaged. They'll be interacting with second screens or even third screens whilst watching content. So that's a big one for them. If you can deploy a system that removes some of the barriers of fast turnaround workflows, things like replicating content or moving media from one place where it's being recorded to another for editorial teams to actually get it out onto the platforms, that can give you a massive advantage. There's other reasons as well they're looking to do it, like content consistency. From a marketing perspective, things like branding, making sure that that's consistent across all of the content that you're putting out is really important. And a centralized platform can do that. It can do things like manage templates or project styles or assets that everybody's going to use as it moves out to other platforms. And that automated publishing is another part of it as well. Using those standardized templates that you get from a centralized platform, you can automate a lot of the downstream kind of activities you need to take, things like transcoding or leveraging, softwares to change aspect ratios for different platforms and that kind of thing. So those are three of the main reasons, but there's many benefits to doing that. I'm sure we'll hear from the others on.
Fantastic, thank you. And Scott, Sky obviously has a massive portfolio of rights that you're sending to a host of different platforms. Tell us about Sky's journey towards creating that kind of centralized hub, and do those reasons, which Alex has just mentioned, do those resonate with you as motivations for working towards this? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's a journey, I think is the word, right? I'd love to sit here today and go, yeah, we've done it, it's finished, we've got a content hub. I might not be needed if that's the case, but it is huge. It's, we're converging from a traditional broadcast world and trying to produce brilliant content that traditionally would go out linear. We've now got digital, we've got social, we've got product experiences, and trying to bring all of these worlds together that would have all been separate is very challenging. But to Alex's point, yeah, we've got kind of those things on our list of, we need to do this for this reason. And there are many challenges to that. We've gone through lots already with, moving away from tape into digitization. And once we've done that, we're still on hardware, but now into software and into cloud. And there's going to be many iterations of this, but it's trying to make sure we're working as smartly as we can, right? And with the resources we have, they are finite, and we've got to be able to give our teams the best tools they can to be able to access the content as quickly as possible, and we've got to reach customer at the right time, right? And in certain cases, that will be as quickly as possible, and that will involve some automation within the flow to get it there because it is time sensitive. Other times it may not be as quickly as possible, but at an appropriate time, and we know we've got deadlines to work on, and we need to have the right tools in our hands to do that.
And you mentioned it's a journey that Sky's on at the moment. So if this was, I don't know, if we were going from here to Sky HQ, are you getting on the tube in Zone 1, or are you getting on the shuttle bus at Ostomy?
I don't think we can answer because I don't think we know our destination. Right? I think that's the thing. It moves all the time, and to not wanting to use a sports pun, but the goalposts constantly move. Right? We are delivering something today, and we're working on priorities today. But more and more importantly, do we need to think strategically and look ahead to the next 3 to 5 years? What we know, what we don't know, but how we can best, use the intelligence we have and the people we have to kind of guide that strategy on. Okay, we need to think about these things. They may not be a priority today. However, we're going to have to build systems around this that will allow us to expand in that direction, should we need to. So, the types of tools that we use and that we would deploy, I think going back 10 years would have been quite hard-coded, quite fixed, and they'd serve the need then. I think looking now with a lot more software in market and a lot more capabilities, we would be trying to be really strategic over what we pick to give ourselves that agility to flex and to move into different directions.
And Donald, can you tell us what you would feel are the kind of key technological, key sort of architectural considerations when building out a content hub, perhaps when trying to kind of achieve some of the things which Scott has spoken about?
Yeah, I think both my colleagues have mentioned things that are very important for being able to feed the demand for content that will be coming in the future. If you step right back and look at the volume of content that's increasing to broadcasters today, it's increased dramatically over the last 10 years, and it's likely to increase dramatically in the future. So the amount of content the broadcasters will be using, and broadcasters will become quite a broad term as we go forward. They won't be what we think of them in the past. And the way they use that content will have to be centralized if it's to be used effectively inside of the brand of the particular broadcaster or the particular supplier. So having a unified and centralized, I'm reluctant to say centralized because actually I think a lot of the functions will be distributed. people won't work in centralised facilities, for instance. So you need to have some way in order to have all of that content available to many people who are not necessarily in the same place, but can work interactively together to produce content that has the same branding, the same look and feel of the particular supplier. And the obvious way to do that is some kind of cloud infrastructure, to put everything in a cloud environment where you can all access it from common tools. At the same time, you still want to be able to select the right tools for the job. And in that cloud environment, you have to be able to choose a range of options. You can't just choose one unified solution. Maybe there's one out there that will suit everyone's needs at all times, but there probably aren't. So you're probably going to be putting multiple solutions together to provide what you would do in a typical machine room, which is use best of breed for each section. You're probably going to want to do that in the future, but you're going to do it in a different environment. And that brings its own challenges as well.
Sorry, can I add something to that? That is really interesting, and you're absolutely right. And we're kind of talking about the Content Hub initially being something that you use to get content out to your consumers, out to the viewers. But there is a need to kind of bring that unified platform, whether it's a distributed architecture or whatever it is, higher up the chain to the kind of production and work in progress part of the workflow as well. And that's where you can get benefits, I think, and you're absolutely right, the goalposts keep moving. You're not sure where you have to get to, 2, 3, 4 years. It will be a different, architecture for sure, but being able to put something in place that allows you to start that journey and potentially leverage existing investments that you've got, which might be more traditional, for want of a better word, ingest tools and devices and hardware that you've got out at live events and stuff like that, to be able to leverage those but still begin that journey and have the confidence you're going in the right direction to become fully cloud native in future or whatever that might look like is really important for our customers as well. So.
And what do you feel a kind of realistic roadmap looks like then for an organisation that is transitioning from a kind of legacy, potentially fragmented group of systems to that kind of cloud-based environment? What is what's the kind of realistic roadmap and way in which you can approach building something like that out?
I think Scott's going to be able to answer this far more eloquently than me, but I imagine it's quite a scary journey, and it's not a case that you have to make a decision, and certainly what our customers, and we're working with global broadcasters with millions and millions of subscribers, and real world workflows. It's not a case that they can flip a switch, next week and just stop using all of their existing infrastructure and change the way all of their talented people work and forget about all of the platforms and services and support contracts and trucks and everything they've got. You can't just flip the switch and change. It's about being able to leverage that in a scalable way and augment it with cloud-native services and new technologies or revolutionary technologies rather than evolutionary technologies to ultimately get to, 2-3 years down the line when you can kind of end-of-life certain approaches or techniques or workflows. I imagine that's maybe kind of your experience.
Yeah, 100%. It's evolution and not revolution. I think, we're very much on that journey and we've done some of that already, but it's going to take time. And I think on that roadmap, you need to get all of your teams prepared and you need to make sure everyone is comfortable with change. And I don't just mean the change they're going to go through, but scope creep, right? And scope creep sounds like a negative term. It's not, right? Things change. You will get opportunities that arise, and as a business, you have to assess that opportunity on its value. And if it feels right, you need to find a way. And that is often, things will come up, and it may not have been in our plan for the work we're doing, but we have to find a way. And I think we're working towards a position where it'll be a little bit easier for us to be able to introduce that change and to be able to bring it in by putting in, an agile foundation of where we're going.
When you use a phrase like scope creep, in my mind, that means something sort of growing and becoming, sort of a bit of a beast and hard to manage. How do you, if you're adding things to the remit of what you're doing, are you taking things away as well? How do you stop it becoming kind of too large to manage? Because we've seen some quite high-profile examples of, effectively kind of digital asset management systems that become all things to all people and ultimately end in failure. So how do you kind of avoid that happening?
I guess it's the foundation, right? We've got to get the foundation right, and I think things will be added, things could be taken away if they're no longer needed, but it's making sure that if, when we're building that out, we put in foundations that allow us to introduce new features. And to Donald's point around cloud, it's being able to add features, functionalities, tools into that system, but at the same time, having the ability to unplug them. So that could be, technically, but contractually position ourselves in the right way so that we can remove those things if we need to, we can add things in, we can adapt them. And I think, when I work with partners in the industry and vendors, my ask is that they are a partner, right? I don't want a supplier-client relationship where, every extra thing we talk about is dollar signs in the eyes. It's more about, we've got an opportunity to do something, let's try and do something in partnership. It's going to change, and it's having that flex. And they're the kind of partners we look for when we're coming up with these opportunities, and we want to build something together that ultimately will benefit both.
And obviously for Sky, when you look at the group operations in multiple countries, is what you're trying to achieve something which is applicable at a group level? How do you work across those other territories where Sky has a presence?
Yeah, careful what I say, because Alessandro's here somewhere. It's absolutely, it's what we try to do. There is always best endeavours to work as a Sky group, across all of our territories. However, don't force it, right? Just because we're all Sky, it doesn't mean that I'm going to coin Duncan's phrase, one size does not fit all. Okay, not just from a customer perspective, but from a company and how we work perspective. So yes, we absolutely look at that infrastructure and how we do it today, and how we do it today in each territory will be very different, and the on-prem technology that's there will be very different, but absolutely there is cloud work going on in each territory now, and we are starting to see the benefits of that through, we've built out some operations in the UK that are ultimately serving streaming across all territories. Okay, streaming to our Sky products and our Now and Wow products in Germany and Italy as well. So by building out in the right way, we can benefit and we can share that resource and we can learn from it. At the same time, if it doesn't fit, don't force it. Okay, we should allow those local territories, any of them, to be able to control for their audience. Because again, for the audience, not one size fits all. And if it needs to be done differently, that needs to be factored in.
Yeah, another approach to preventing scope creep, which can be beneficial because you learn about new ways of doing things, or identify other efficiencies that you can gain. But it can also prolong things. It can have a negative effect where you're never quite sure if the end of the project has been met, if you can't ring fence or determine the success criteria of a test anyway. So, a lot of our customers will try to consciously identify, and it's good practice generally, I would say, to identify the kind of biggest challenge or the highest value challenge that they can solve, whether that's related to a specific deliverable, like we've got a project and need to do that, or we've got an issue like a support contract with a current vendor is coming to an end and we need to make a decision about what to do. Kind of highlight the specifics of the challenge you're trying to solve, and if you can solve 70 to 80 to 90% of that problem easily, with and it sounds kind of contradictory, right? A flexible foundation, but that's exactly what you want. You want to build something that's solid for the long term that you can overlay other services onto, or adapt other workflows, or bring in other teams or departments as the adoption grows. But you want it to be reliable and there for the future as well. So if you can do that and solve 80% of your challenge with that foundation, and then you've got the flexibility and the freedom to try new things on top, you can make a lot of progress that way as well, and take that first step.
I think there's two components to all change. One is the underlying change, which changes the technology, and then there's a change in the organisation of the people that are using the technology. In an ideal world, in a broadcaster, you wouldn't change your user experience to your operatives. If they can continue to do what they're doing in the same way with the same platforms they have today, that's one chunk of a problem that you've solved without doing anything. And there is the possibility to take the same tools that you have today and move them to a cloud-based environment. And the operative doesn't necessarily have to see any real difference in how it's doing. The process may be quicker, and they may be a bit more flexible, might be able to work from home without any issues, but there's no necessary step that they'll see something different. So that solves one half of the problem. The technology part of the problem, the underlying technology part of the problem, can be addressed in the normal cycle of broadcasters. Broadcasters still work on a CapEx basis by and large, so there's large chunks of what they're doing they replace every 5 to 7 years. And if they planned for that, you could replace those with a more future-proof system by doing components of your production in a different way without really upsetting the back end of it. It takes maybe a bit more planning than traditionally would be done, but it can be done that way.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. And, my marketing team, or our marketing team, who kind of told me to be here today, it would be quite remiss of me
you're a
if
willing participant. Surely.
Exactly. It would be remiss of me not to say that's exactly what LucidLink do, is we sit behind the application layer. So you can enable things like remote collaboration without impacting the way the end users are working, whether it's, an editorial workflow or, post-production supervisors. So yeah, it's one of the biggest challenges, getting that user buy-in, the way people are already working to still create things efficiently.
I accept cash.
Just very quickly to add on that, and look, operator and user buy-in is key, right? And trying to keep things as they are for them is brilliant if we can, but equally we've got to be prepared to change as well. And I think that's where we have to be very careful with our people and how we recruit our people to make sure we've got the right people that are going to come on a journey when we do change and they're going to embrace it. Because I think as an industry, we have to be ready to evolve and adapt and move things forward. And if it means that workflows change and they're changing for the better, the people have got to come with us.
Okay, so just as a final question to each of you, so looking for each of you to give an answer to this one. For those organisations that are seeing the amount of content that they're managing, that they're repurposing and distributing, seeing that amount grow, what should they be investing in today in order to try and sort of future-proof their content workflows for tomorrow?
I mean, we
don't
gonna,
say LucidLink.
No, I'm not,
you can't just
I'm not going to
say
say LucidLink. I thought you were going to say don't say AI, because that's the other thing people shouldn't talk about, right? But with more content and the need, and certainly like the social side of it is faster, shorter, short-form content, and there's a lot of it. It's finding the relevant stuff, the contextual stuff. So there's the obvious kind of answer to begin with, which is, a platform that not only allows you to work with the asset, like edit it, use it, but find it, and most of the time it's one or the other. You have really efficient kind of metadata discovery tools, whether it's media asset management or AI-generated metadata, facial recognition, object recognition, whatever it is, where, yes, you can find something out of your massive library of content, and it's super contextual and potentially super valuable in the moment, but it's quite hard to actually do something with it. You can find it, but then you've got this, like, what happens next? I've got to download it, or I've got to copy it, or I've got to, do something else that's going to slow me down. Versus I've got instant access to data, but I have to have domain knowledge of it in my head to be able to find things, a folder structure in Finder or Windows Explorer, without that additional layer of metadata. So being able to do both, like generate metadata, whether that's through AI or parsing logs from Opta or some other service or human logging, but then being able to work with the asset once you've found it is really important. And combining media asset management and storage collaboration technology to do that is a good step to take.
Fantastic.
Yeah, look, I think I concur with that, right? Data, as in metadata tagging, is key. And I think, you've got to be able to look after your content, and you've got, at Sky, we've got a whole host of content, and it could be better tagged. And I'm going back legacy content now. Going forwards, we're doing fine, but we've got a whole host of content. We need to tag it well. We need access to it. We need tools that we can do something with it. And then those tools need to be applicable for live as well. So with live content coming in, or tools that are overlaid on the top for teams. We were talking about watch-alongs and also how we produce social content and content for our audiences, making sure all of that plumbs together. So we're able to draw on archive, live, produced, all at the same time. and get it out to our customers.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
Donald, you have the final word.
Thank you. I think that nothing to disagree with in those two comments. One of the other things that's very important to do is to look at how you're going to scale both your received content, because the number of feeds you're going to get is going to increase dramatically, and from where they are coming will increase dramatically. And also how you deliver those to other locations or franchisees or other organisations that might want access to those. That may be via an archive or a MAM or something like that, but it might also be live feeds. And you can waste extraordinary amounts of money and time just trying to plumb stuff into other people. It used to be quite easy to do with satellite because you just had access on a particular satellite. You could do that quite easily, and it was almost like a broadcast delivery. Now more and more of it's done via IP. You can waste a lot of time managing getting it to third parties, and there are smart ways of doing that.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we are out of time, but there's a fascinating extension to a lot of those conversations that we heard earlier today. So thank you very much for sharing all of that with us. Please join me in thanking our panel. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Alex. And thank you, Scott. Thank you.